So now that we know a little bit about App Engine, we can get into how we can do the most basic simple thing, which is serving static files. Way back in the beginning of the internet, when you would actually build something and put it out there for people to see, mostly what you were doing was building some basic HTML that was just a common normal file on your file system, and a web server took that file from your file system and just sent it using HTTP out of the ports on your file or on your computer. So it was more or less the internet in the earliest days was letting people see files on your computer. It was really simple file sharing. You have websites now that are much more dynamic. They dynamically produce all of this content, but it's still very useful to serve static files because you have things like images and scripts and CSS files and HTML that don't change that frequently. So static files, by definition, these are just plain files that are not dynamically generated. There are a couple of benefits of this, and one of them is a content delivery network. So a content delivery network is basically an idea that you can replicate and store some of these files somewhere that's a little bit easier to access instead of going across the internet to access them. So, if you think about this, like if you go to a commonly used website like Amazon.com, the Amazon.com logo may be something that doesn't change frequently. So that doesn't have to actually be served directly from the Amazon servers. That could be served from a server that's maybe a little bit closer to where you are, along with other static content that, doesn't change. It can just be cached closer to the computer. You probably know from other computer science principles that the further we get away from the processor, the longer it takes to load things. So things in memory load faster than things on disk. Things on disk typically load faster than things across the network. And then when you go further and further across networks, it takes more and more time. So content delivery networks can make things very effective so that we don't have to load these from their original source. So if we take a look at static files, we're gonna think about a couple of different things. So one of the concepts that we should really break apart here is this app.yaml file that we're looking at. It's listing the runtime as Python 3.9, and that's actually out of date. It should be Python 3.10, but other than that, we have some handlers for different scripts. So what happens on line 4 here? We have this handler and then this URL. So basically what this says is if I have a website, like if I have www.mywebsite.com, and a request comes in for something at the /static. So www.mywebsite.com/static/ image.png. That's going to be redirected to this static files folder that's going to exist in my App Engine application. So we'll take a look at that in the GitHub folder in just a moment, in this GitHub repository, so that we can kind of see how this is different. Now, this will take anything that is requested from static and just basically map that right to a file system file. So it's going to any request that comes in /static, then anything after that it's going to look for an exact match in the static files folder in our App Engine application. So you can name these the same. Some people do, but I like to name them differently to illustrate that difference, so that you can kind of see how requests from the internet come and are mapped to these different folders or these different scripts that we might have. Now, on line 7 and 8, you can see here that we are actually using a URL, and this is basically saying anything that's not already matched, / and then this is a regular expression, .* basic, or * means any character repeated 0 or more times. So, any sequence of characters, this is sort of the catch-all, we're going to automatically detect the script, and that's going to be our main.py. So in our main.py, we're going to import our Flask. So we're going to do a couple of imports here so that we can import Flask, and then we're going to write a response. Now you can see on line 5, we're going to create a Flask app, and then we're going to use some annotations, and these just allow us to identify for different requests how we should handle them. So this is going to take all requests to the root. So if we go to www.mywebsite.com and just leave it at that, that's going to be a root request. And in this case, we're going to return a response, and we're going to return a type of text plain. So this actually won't be rendered as HTML in the browser, and we'll see how that works differently from when we actually send HTML. And then the rest of this just allows us to run in the development server. So if we add HTML to this, then we can have a folder here called static files folder, just like we said, and then HTML. So we're going to get into the elements and tags of HTML and how we can explore that a little bit in the next lecture. But for now, this is a really simple basic HTML file. It basically has an element opening saying that we're going to have an HTML document, then a body identifying what we actually want to show to the user, and then some simple text. This is an HTML file. So now we can kind of see the difference here. For this one on the top, this is not HTML. This is when we're going to the root here. So this is being mapped to that Python script. It's returning a response that is plain text. And you can see the font here. This font is going to be different than the default font for HTML. So here you can see /static/index.html. We're going to retrieve that HTML file, and that's going to be that font that sort of identifies that this is a different, this one is actually the HTML, and this is how plain text is going to be rendered in this browser. So this is all out in the GitHub. We can take a look at that. We'll walk through this example in the next lecture just to kind of show you how this is going to work. Thanks for watching.